unveiling of our strategic plan. We have folks live with us this afternoon at Alumni Theater Company. We also will be streaming this on Facebook and Zoom, and we have folks that are joining us there virtually as well. For those that are in the room, show of hands, how many, this is the first time at Alumni Theater Company? Okay, wonderful. Well, we are going to invite the Executive Director of Alumni Theater Company to tell you a little bit more about the organization before we jump into our portion. Over to you, Bridget.
Thank you. Thanks, Patrick. Hi. As you said, my name is Bridget Purdue, and I'm humbled Executive Director of Alumni Theater Company. Just a little bit about us. Our mission is to create bold theatrical work that gives fresh voice to the experience of young Black artists and highlights their rich contribution to our community. We are in our 17th season of creating work. We actually opened this theater in 2018, dedicated to Bill Nunn, who was a mentor to our founder, Hallie Donner. But we start in 6th grade and offer training in the theater arts. We give all of our middle schoolers and high schoolers an artistic professional as a mentor, offer senior support, and just kind of guide them through their adolescence into college and career, artistic career, whichever they desire. So we hope that you'll come back and see a show and see our young kids, but we're really excited. I was very excited when Patrick said, can we have this, like, can we do this here? So I'm excited to hear about your strategic plan, and thank you guys for being a part of this space.
So we're going to try to make this more conversational than just a straight presentation. So we're going to be having a conversation among staff and board, as well as in between sections of our presentation, inviting you all to ask questions as well. And then we will also close with a Q&A as well. We hope that you all also can stick around for our monthly networking event, Creating 5, which will go from 5:30 to 7:30. Before we get started, we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Patrick. I am the CEO of the Greater Pittsburgh Arts Council. I've been with the organization about 15 months now. It's been a very fast-paced 15 months. A good portion of that was actually the strategic planning process. So I've really enjoyed my time living and being immersed in Pittsburgh's community, and really continue to be impressed by Pittsburgh's artistic talent and contributions. And I'm going to ask each person to introduce themselves in their own words. Hand it over to you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Mia Hooper. I am the COO. I have been at the Greater Pittsburgh Arts Council for a little over 5 years. I originally started as the manager of corporate and foundation relations. Then I took over some of the grant making stuff, but now I'm the COO. Very excited for the strategic plan. Very excited what it means for the next 5 years.
All right. I don't know if I need this, but I'm going to use it. Nayli Russo. I am a business strategist and executive coach. I own a company that focuses on empowering women to advance their careers, whether it is in the corporate space or within entrepreneurship and their small businesses. I also serve as the strategic advisor and executive coach for the Pittsburgh Pirates, which is how I met Patrick, having them as a client now this year. Before, I used to work for them running all of their human resources and strategy. I'm actually originally from Venezuela, and Patrick asked me to share a little bit of my connection to the arts and why he asked me to be a part of the board. This is what, maybe month 2 for me, 3. But I actually used to play the oboe professionally in Venezuela before moving to the United States. Play for the Miranda Symphony there, and then I chose to stop music to move here to the United States and pursue other careers. So I'm very excited about the work that the council is doing, mostly because of my passion to ensure that the talent of individuals are visible, and specifically minorities and women. So.
Hello, I'm Jay Thomas Agnew. I'm terrible at explaining what I do, all the great things that I'm involved in. I am the newly appointed vice chair of the board. I've been on the board for about 7 years now. I'm also co-owner, operations manager at Bloom Concepts. This year we're celebrating our 10th anniversary. So yes, been in the arts for a long time. Also previously before that, ran an online publication called Genesis Magazine. just was sort of surrounding and supporting and uplifting youth lifestyle, you know, kind of underground businesses, artists, and you know, different communities of work trying to uplift and grow and build and you know, cover people from America internationally. You know, it did great opportunity just to like really build with a lot of artists, and that definitely helped me build Boom Concepts with my partner DS Kenzel. So yes, that's where I'm at.
Hi, my name is Michael Sawyer. I'm a new member of the board. I'm a professor in the English department at the University of Pittsburgh, where I'm also the director of graduate studies there. And I direct the graduate program in cultural studies. I'm primarily writer on literature and the Black aesthetic, formally and also informally. And then again, Patrick had asked us to talk about kind of our relationship to the arts. I've written 4 books, right? My first book was on the concept of temporality. The second one was a book on Malcolm X, but I just finished a book on Lewis Hamilton, the Formula One race driver, his biography, and a 4th book that's on the Black aesthetic, broadly considered, thinking about visual art, music, theater, et cetera, as revolutionary concepts. And I also have my own art practice in both sound and immersive video technology. And I look forward to the interaction and also participating in the board.
Thank you very much for joining us today and being part of the conversation, as well as your service on our board. I also do want to acknowledge our staff members who are not up front and center with us, but still a very integral part of this afternoon. We have Lisa, our Director of Communications and Marketing. We have Mona, our Program Specialist who handles our grant making. And then we have John, our Grant Manager, who helps make sure we have the resources we need to pursue this strategic plan. So you want to go ahead and move the next slide? So I'm going to start with a little bit of the background and methodology of our strategic plan. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Mona. So this plan covers the next 5 years of our operations, so 2025 to 2029. The process actually started in October 2023 and was facilitated by Workforce Collaborative and Shannon Paris Consulting. We formed internally a strategic planning task force, and we published a national RFP, and we received and reviewed about 13 submissions and kind of continued to go back and forth between the pros and cons of working with someone that's local and knowledgeable of our community, as well as someone that's maybe outside of our community and doesn't have any of the inherent biases or preconceived notions that they might have if they were part of the community. Inevitably, we really felt that Workforce Collaborative and Shannon Paris Consulting were the right folks to lead this work. And they bring with them a wealth of knowledge about Pittsburgh's arts sector, as well as knowledge about the arts sector nationally and internationally as well. So within that RFP that we published, which then informed the scope of work of our consultants, we started with about 7 questions that we really wanted the strategic planning process to delve into and help us answer. The first is, what should the Arts Council's strategic priorities be for the next 3 to 5 years? Next is, what is the optimal mix of programs and services for the Arts Council and the community that we serve? We also looked at the considerations that affect our membership model and how we can use that for financial planning. We really wanted to dive into what resources do we need to be supportive and effective in our operations. We wanted to look at how do we track and measure progress as we move forward in the plan. We wanted to look at existing, needed, and potential shared services opportunities, the delivery models and pricing ranges. And then finally, who is the Arts Council's target audience? Those are all things that we wanted our consultants to work with us through. One thing that I am very proud of is how involved in the process our staff was. From the beginning to the end, every phase of the process, the staff was embedded. And they also had full access to all of the information that was submitted to our consultants. So we moved forward with full transparency with staff and board. We entered into the process, I think, very humbled and acknowledging that we needed to trust the process. And then we would also be presented with moments and conversations that may be discomforting, but that we would need to embrace those experiences as opportunities for learning and growth. And I would say that we definitely had quite a few of those along the way. We also accepted that we were faced with hard truths. It would be important that we would hold ourselves accountable and not simply offer apologies. And then finally, when talking about the methodology and process, there was about 40 hours of collected interviews and conversations that our consultants led with staff, board, as well as community stakeholders. And we had a lot of folks that shared their insights, perspectives, and opinions of the Arts Council. Before we move on, I know two of our board members weren't here yet for that process, but Mia or Thomas, anything you'd like to add about the process or methodology?
I think it was a lot of things that you will see in the plan is, really just taking a good look back at some of the operations and how we worked with the community. And really now something that I've always been, involved in and really spoke about was just like really making sure that the resources were available for the people and how we really stood for the community, how we connected with the community. And we challenged ourselves in talking about that and how we could do that, how could we do better, some of the placements and places that we didn't really need to be in. And it was important in being able to explain that to the public and show how we were really going to stand in that. I think just kind of in the past, a lot of people have always questioned what does UPAC, what does UPAC do? And what are some of the resources and things that are available? And I think now with the work that we are doing, especially with some of the work that Mia and Patrick have done, that will show up indefinitely in the work that we are doing in the future.
Thank you. Mona, you can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So throughout the presentation, you're going to see some quotes that as part of that 40 hours of interviews and conversations that were shared with us openly by community participants. And one of them was that, I think the community recognized that the Arts Council hasn't always been a strong program presenter, but that they viewed us as an invaluable hub for information and a place to kickstart resources. And that really, I feel like was a jumping off point for our internal conversations in the planning process. If you want to go to the next slide. So, as I mentioned, there were opportunities that we were faced with, I think, moments of discomfort and hard truths. And really that led to us really making sure that we were open to owning our past mistakes and really laying those past mistakes out and being honest with ourselves about them. And that first one was really recognizing the history of program mismanagement that the Arts Council demonstrated and how that had a negative impact on community trust. Examples of that manifest in a few different ways, one of which is administering programs that were duplicative of other programs being offered within the arts ecosystem. And when we were doing that, unintentionally, we were diverting resources away from the member organizations that were trusted to support, as well as public attention and social capital. And we really wanted to make sure that we were no longer doing that. So we wanted to make sure that we were mindful of the impacts that those duplicative programs had and conscious about the best and most appropriate ways to sunset them. We also recognized through the findings that we demonstrated a pattern of haphazardly starting and then stopping programs, and then poorly communicating our decisions, which created instability for individuals and organizations that rely on us. And a lot of that haphazard starting and stopping really was a result of programs being built around the staff that existed at the Arts Council at the time. And then when that staff moves on, that knowledge is lost and there's no one to administer those programs in the same way that they previously did, or funding and resources not being thought through years in advance and how programs could be sustained. It was kind of hand to mouth for a lot of years. And, on that topic of harming vulnerable populations as a result of program mismanagement, one thing that I do think is really important is that we acknowledge some of the vulnerable populations that I think we overpromised and underdelivered on. First is our disabled artist creative cohort, and I want to recognize former members Sandra, Tess, Kalia, Sarah, Eli, Asher, and River, as well as the Black Arts Action Committee, and recognize Michael, Savion, Khalil, Ashante, and Petra. I think we brought those groups to the table with a high degree of excitement when we first started out. And because those programs really weren't thought through and resourced properly, led to a lot of, I think, disappointment. And again, wanting to make sure that we own that and be accountable for that. And in recognizing these things, really making sure that we are committed to rectifying our mistakes of the past and repairing damaged relationships. If you want to go ahead and move to the next slide. Well, before we do, I was wondering if anybody would like to touch on that in particular, because I do feel like a lot of the strategic planning process really did center around some of those things. And Mia and Thomas as longstanding staff and board members, and Thomas, you in particular, is I think someone that often was who folks would turn to as a result of some of that harm. Just wondering if there's anything that you'd like to share to them.
I really think what's important whenever you build something is not just thinking about it as just in the present. We all know where we live at. We know that the city revolves around nonprofit funding and nonprofit cycles, and only thinking about how do we promote, fund, support our programming based off of these cycles is very harmful. Especially when you're asking for community information, community input. You want people to be involved. You want people to stand behind things that you are building and creating. When you are building something up that people are enjoying and wanting to get involved in, and then all of a sudden it disappears, it leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And, for a while there, a lot of our programming was disappearing. We had a grant program that worked very well. And it's like first 2 years, and then it wasn't funded, or we didn't look for additional funding to, continue that. I think a lot of artists, definitely had questions and wondered what was happening, and, there wasn't a lot of answers that we could give on why things disappeared. When I look at the BAAC, just my involvement in trying to help build the things that we talked about, committed to, especially when it comes to advocacy of Black and brown people, it's something that was like really important. But, again, when you base it off of finance, or, you're asking people to do specific type of work, but you're not looking towards the future around how you give them an opportunity to build what it is that they want to build, people will step back and they don't want to get involved. And you just continue the process of having community members that are unhappy with how you do your work. So, it's really important with the strategic plan that we all sat down and talked about these things out loud. We really discussed this. We didn't shy away from some of the language that was involved that you see also in the strategic plan, and really took responsibility for that type of work and how we made people feel. I talk to artists all the time, especially just with my organization and with GPAC. And I think it's always important that we put the people in the community first, instead of thinking about the money or whatever opportunity is available at that time first. So.
And, these conversations that we have with community members as a staff, with the board, really led to us recognizing that we need to have a shift in behavior, and identifying what that shift should mean in definitive ways. And the first is that the Arts Council will move from being reactive to proactive, and that we will operationalize transparency, goal setting, metrics, and accountability. I think those are things that as we talked as a staff and as we received feedback from the community, we recognized had been missing from the organization for some time. We also will be building the capacity of our staff so that we can provide constant and consistent responsiveness. The organization has had a history of high turnover and fluctuating, faces and positions. And I think that creates a little bit of difficulty with community members knowing who they can turn to and how they can, receive the degree of care and service that they deserve. So recognizing that we have to build that staff capacity. We also recognize that we need to provide our stakeholders with more frequent updates, both about our work, but also what is going on within the sector. And then finally, another measurable shift in behavior that you'll see from the Arts Council as a result of this plan is that we'll actively gather community input about our activity and revise our plan as necessary based on that feedback. You want to go ahead and next slide, Mona. One of the things that we went into with this plan was kind of with the assumption that shared services was something that was necessary and that it would maybe be a good focus for the Arts Council. And working with Shannon Paris Consulting actually developed a screening tool to assess shared service opportunities. We looked at what we hear in our community as a need, as well as thought about what we could actually sustain long-term, while also thinking about, is this an issue for arts nonprofits, or is this a larger issue for nonprofits as a whole? And if so, is it the Arts Council's issue to own, or can we be a collaborator and ally in it? And through that process, ended up kind of honing in on two areas that showed up the most, which was shared health benefits and shared retirement benefits. And what was really interesting coming in as a new CEO and having these conversations is through the process of Shannon doing her due diligence, she actually found out that this was the third time that the Arts Council has done this research and has done this kind of deep dive in shared services. And that each time the Arts Council did this, they concluded the same things, is that it essentially isn't possible to do in the state of Pennsylvania, the way that things are structured. But it was interesting that wasn't really documented anywhere. So for 3 times now, we've dedicated capacity to researching the same thing, ultimately to come to the same conclusion. And I think having this plan as a tangible plan now actually also creates a little bit of a stamp in time so that maybe future iterations of the Arts Council aren't going down the same alley to only come up with the same conclusions. But ultimately, we found that shared services in those areas weren't possible as a result of regulations. So at this point in time, shared services are not something that we are going to be pursuing based off of the limited likelihood that we could, 1, legally administer them, but 2, sustain them long-term and administer them in a responsible way. I want to go ahead and change the slide. So before we move on to this next section, really want to open it up to you all to ask questions based off of that first group of information and what we've shared. If John, if you see anybody that has a question, if you could make sure they have a microphone. As audience members, as members of the arts community, as our stakeholders, any questions based off of what we shared in this first section?
It does seem like, it does seem to me. It seems like to me that you guys are really putting forth a lot of thinking, but I don't feel like it's heartfelt with the tenets and the strategies. I don't really feel like I'm feeling that you guys are really committed in your heart to broadening the art space. And if you could speak to how I'm feeling as a spectator looking in, what tangibly are you going to change as far as opening it up to people of color, women, non-binary?
Yeah, And that's, thank you for asking that question. We will get into some of that in the later slides, but I think the first thing I'd like to say is I know we have to prove ourselves. I think there has been a lot of overpromising and under-delivering in the past. So that skepticism, that hesitation in just trusting the words, I completely understand it. It's 100% valid. And I ask that you hold us and everybody in this room, hold us accountable to what's in this plan. And that, you know, I hope that you grant us the grace over the next couple months, couple years, to actually demonstrate in action that they're more than just words and we're not being performative about this commitment. But right now, out of the gate, as we just have this plan and we're developing the implementation plan out of it, I'm not going to try to convince you. Otherwise, I do want to prove to actions. Sorry, to everybody in the room. I don't want to just throw words at it. I want to prove it through action. John.
I will Zoom with the microphone for people who are tuning in online. I hear all these ideas and yeah, I can understand how there's just been repeating same old thing over and over again. But the thing that hits me is there's no target. There's no target. What? There's a bookstore on the north side, Alphabet City, that's tied up with Icon. And they say their purpose, their objective is to create a just community. Now they admit it's kind of crappy, but they picked it up, and at least it presents an idea. We're aiming for this, whatever it is. What the hell is the Arts Council aiming?
Yeah.
We talk about these different communities and we have to provide them service, that's all fine and dandy. But I want to call it the bottom line, see, what's the target? Is it to have a fully integrated artistic community within the greater Pittsburgh area? Which sounds impossible, which makes it a great idea. Okay, what's the impossible thing that we're talking about here outside of herding cats?
Yeah, so what came out of this plan is a new vision, and that vision is that Pittsburgh is a global contemporary city as it relates to the arts. And what that means in practice is that all of our talent here has the opportunity to be supported equitably. I think that when you look at what Pittsburgh has, especially as a non-major metropolitan area like New York City, DC, etc., it is remarkable what exists by way of the talent in our community, by way of the organizations in our community. But I think that while we've had the appropriate ingredients, we've been getting the recipe wrong. And I think that it's our responsibility to contribute to adjusting that recipe so that, as I mentioned, Pittsburgh can be a contemporary global city. You know, in the last 12 months, I've done over 100 studio visits with artists, sat in their studios, learned about their practice, heard directly from them what their relationships to the Arts Council has been or haven't been, learned about what their needs are, heard what they aspire for in their careers as artists. And, you know, with each person that we sit with, we follow up with resources, with information, with introductions and connections, so that they don't feel like they're in it alone. I think that when folks think about the Arts Council, they think that we are a heavily resourced organization. And while we are certainly a resourced organization, if you look at our budget, right now it's about 1.8 million. And in the grand scheme of things, that puts us in the small to mid-sized range. But I think folks think of us as a heavily resourced organization and primarily sometimes as a grant maker. When truth is, the greatest resources that we offer is not always financial. It's actually the connectiveness of our community. It is the information-based resources that we can share out. It's the advocacy work that we can do. So, you know, what is it that we are aiming for? It is that Pittsburgh is a global contemporary city, that we're not just talking about the people that left, the Andy Warhols, the August Wilsons. We're talking about the people that live here presently, and we're finding ways to uplift their practices and support them while they're living and working here in our community. Does that answer your question? Or?
Oh, yes, or no, I guess. But as soon as you put it that way, then I start thinking the flip side, okay, you're dealing with the artists, how does this bring the other side, who aren't artists, who make artists possible? You understand what I'm saying?
Are you talking about?
If artists don't have audiences of a sort, okay, then they're operating in isolation. Okay, so that you put that, and when you say you want to make, you're talking about the environmental factor, which is Pittsburgh. Okay. Then you say that, then you said, we're addressing this side. Okay, so how do we present this side to the greater body?
Absolutely.
See, I look at it from both sides.
Absolutely. And, you know, when I think about the areas that the Arts Council should be operating, it's at systems level change, which is what you're talking about. But a lot
I
of,
talk about small things, but the town I come from is a small city on the East Coast. Every year, and they have, for at least since I was actually living there, it's been almost 20 years since I lived there. They have every fall an open studios tour. Actually, a weekend, where people, various artists, literally open up the studios, and they got to the point that they started creating studios, vacant office buildings, they would get a couple of floors, and they would have exhibitions in there. So that's when you start bringing the two things together. You understand what I'm saying?
absolutely.
Okay, so I have to look at that from, I hate to use this word, more holistic.
No, I appreciate that. And, you know, I think that to some extent, and I don't want to be the only one talking if anybody else has thoughts or opinions, but, you know, to some extent, what you're talking about is how do you cultivate arts appreciators, art patrons, art audiences, and how do you connect them to the individuals and organizations that are creating the work? Absolutely. And I think that through what we'll get to later on, you'll see that we acknowledge that we own that and that we have to be accountable for that. We have to increase how we're investing in our marketing and communication. We have to really think about how we serve a direct role in promoting our sector, right? We are not a presenting organization, so we will not be the ones that are opening up studios because we don't even have a physical space. But when Radiant Hall has their open studios, when Brewhouse is doing events, right? When others have things that the general population and public can interact with, we very much do own promoting that. And we will be getting to some of the tools that we're going to be investing in to do that better and more effectively. But I will say, you know, the team is very small right now. We're six folks right now. Historically, we're typically around 12 to 14. But I would say, you know, recognizing the work that Lisa has been doing to promote arts and culture events over the last 12 months, I think that we have heard directly from folks that they have learned about events as a result of our promotion of them. Do we have more that we can do? Absolutely. Do we need to see Pittsburgh step up more to support the talent that exists here? Absolutely. Do we play a role in the advocacy of that and the awareness building of that? Absolutely. We're not shying away from that. And again, hold me accountable. Any other questions?
I just have another question.
As far as, thank you for your insights and your expertise and seeing things in a holistic view, because I think that while you're saying you go and you visit artists in their studios, there's a lot of Black artists that don't even have studios, that are making art out of their basements and out of their attics and things like that. And those people are getting overlooked by the Greater Pittsburgh Arts Council because they're not established enough or they don't have the right name. So how are we going to really bring in the talent, bring in the people that want to make art, that are, you know, living for it? You know, how are we really going to tap into that and make it inclusive to those people again?
One point of clarity on my end, when I say studio, I mean a space where someone creates work. I'm not meaning necessarily a rented space. I have been in basements, I have been in attics, I have been in bedrooms as part of that tour. And I hear you, and I agree that there are folks that, you know, they haven't had the resources to be in those formal spaces yet. And again, that's part of the advocacy work that we have to do about how to make that more accessible. But you know, I would push back politely to say that I'm not just spending my time in those formal spaces. I do, and I don't think that our team is only exclusively focusing on folks with certain resources at certain career levels, et cetera. Do I think that there needs to be greater awareness of us as a resource so that folks feel like they have a relationship with us and that they can, more importantly, trust us? Absolutely. That's a lot of the work that we have to do on our end that our plan points out. Any additional questions? Any thoughts, comments, points for consideration from my fellow panelists? I think that, to touch on this topic a little bit, I think that the staff and the board of an organization often reflects what the priority of that organization is. And I will say that we have worked very diligently in consideration of how we're recruiting new directors to our board, thinking about skill set, thinking about perspective, thinking about lived experiences. For the first time in our organization's history that I am aware of, this is the first time that our executive committee is majority, global majority. First time in our organization's history. The folks that have the most power on our board, the most power in our organization, the first time it's global majority. Additionally with that, it's the first time I believe in our organization's history that our board is majority, global majority. And that's not something that we're treating as though it's a finish line and we can stop and we can take our foot off the gas. This is a continued effort and something that I am committed to for as long as I am the CEO of this organization. And I know the staff is committed to, and I know every single one of the board members that's up here right now is committed to. It's very, very important that our board and our staff is reflective of the community that we serve. Yeah.
Thank you. Bridget Purdue, Alumni Theater Company, happy to be here today. I just wanted to say, it's really great to see you, Thomas, on the board, because I think one of the big things is I wrote down accessibility. And I think a lot of times, people from, Black and brown communities, we don't feel like we can approach the door, let alone like that door hasn't been opened, try to crawl through a window, use the back door, whatever the case is, and not knowing like how to really just feeling comfortable to even like approach and understand, and having been different, I don't want to say maybe like preconceived like notions or just like different ideas of what it feels like to get that opportunity or to connect with the people with resources and such. And so like, I just want to highlight Thomas because I know Boom Concepts, right? I know what you have done, like you calling back Genesis magazine. I was like, whoa, like that's so far back. And your commitment to the community too. So I just want to say like, it's dope at the Arts Council, and I look forward to hearing what the new plan is for sure. But I think just seeing some other trusted faces within the community, on the board and in the staff, really can again, just kind of like crack those doors open. So, for what it's worth, I appreciate that and just the other things too. Thank you.
I don't want to rush this. Any other questions, comments before we move to the next slides? Okay, go ahead. So go ahead and move to the next slide as well. So in addition to shifts in behavior, we also, our plan is calling for a shift in focus. So we are going to move away from being a program administrator, and we are going to instead center our capacity on services that provide long-term system level impact. The way that we have been phrasing this is that we are going to be operating as the switchboard operator. That means that within our sector, we play a unique role in informing, connecting, and resourcing the individuals and organizations in the arts ecosystem. So as a staff, we should know our ecosystem well enough that if you have a need and you reach out to us, we might not have the program or the resources that immediately respond to that need, but we should be able to connect you to the resources or programs that do respond to that need. And we should do so in a manner that is tentative, or not tentative, but responsive and caring and responsible. In that, we're going to completely revamp our membership framework, creating clear benefits and compelling reasons for individuals and organizations to become and then stay members. And also, we will make significant investments in our communications and membership support. So to talk about some of the things that raised earlier, that investment in communications is really how we're going to make sure that we are reaching out to the population and calling upon them to make sure that they are engaged with and supporting the arts. Right now, our communications department is just one full-time person. Through this plan, it does call for adding an additional full-time position so that we have the greater ability to create content, push it out into the community, and make sure that we are helping tell the stories of our sector. It's not just about our story as an organization, it's really about telling the story of our sector. Who's presently in our community doing the work, who are the organizations that are presenting that work, and how are we making sure that those stories are actively being told. And in addition to the membership support, that's really where that outreach and engagement comes, and making sure that it's not just about the folks that have formal studios that are getting the access and attention to the Arts Council staff. And when we talk about how do we have trusted faces that join the staff and board, the membership department that we're going to be building out, I think that's the most critical area to make sure those trusted faces are present. I don't want to get to Mia's section, which is talking about the goals and some of the things that are in the plan, but we do call for creating a membership department that will be 3 individuals, 2 full-time individuals and 1 part-time individual. As we work to gain the resources to implement this plan, it's not something that's going to happen overnight for us, but the plan does call for building the capacity in that way. Again, I think it's critical that those folks that fill those roles are the ones that are the faces and voices that are most trusted and that know the community well enough that they can make sure that they're in those pockets and in the communities that historically have not had a relationship with the Arts Council or have not felt like they could access the resources of the Arts Council or the staff of the Arts Council. Yeah.
I wanted to touch on something you just said about us being the switchboard operator. This is something that we've actually always been doing, but in a very informal way. There's tons of examples of folks sending an email to one of our staff members. We go into our Slack channel and say, hey, does anyone know XYZ person that could help this situation? And then we share that information with the folks. The thing about this plan is we're formalizing it. We are making that front and center and making sure people know that they can come to us and ask those questions, and we'll go to our team and figure out how we can help you and who to connect you with. So it's not a new thing, but it's going to be a more robust thing.
And the way that that's going to be built out and more formalized and therefore more robust is what we are calling the creation of a member concierge service. So the same way banks and hotels and other places have concierge, the Arts Council will now have a concierge where you can reach out to our membership department. They will help do the triage to figure out what is the need, what is the information, what is the introduction. And then as Mia mentioned, we often go to Slack and we reach out to the rest of the team and figure out, what resources exist in our community, et cetera. And it'll be through that member concierge service that we will make sure that folks are, as our plan calls for, resourced, informed, and connected. So that concierge service, there's not anything like it that exists right now, not just within our organization, but for any arts council. I think that what we are doing calls for arts councils to think radically different than they historically have. Because as it's been pointed out in the conversations this afternoon, oftentimes it's been those that are closest to resources and closest to power that have had the access and opportunities from arts councils. And that's not just here in Pittsburgh, but it certainly is something that we recognize has been demonstrated. So with the member concierge service, when we talk about how we prioritize the time of our staff, the folks that we are prioritizing are small and mid-sized organizations. So any organization that is below $2 million in its budget. as well as individual artists and creative practitioners. And with that, really making sure that there is a commitment to prioritize Black and brown individuals, non-binary individuals, females, individuals with disabilities in a way that the Arts Council historically has. Go ahead and, oh no, it's on this page. So one of the other ways that we plan to serve folks better is by providing self-advocacy and self-agency. So historically, I think the Arts Council, and not just us, but arts councils as a whole, have been perceived as kind of gatekeepers to resources and knowledge. And we want to make that more readily available to folks. So we are working with a third-party vendor who will be building out a infrastructure that is a centralized information source. So whether it's financial resources, spatial resources, knowledge-based resources, you can go into this interface and find active, accurate, real-time information that allows you to take action on it however you best see fit. Again, this is not something that exists right now in any arts council that I'm aware of in the nation, but we have identified a service contract partner that will help build that out and launch that here in southwestern Pennsylvania. So the ways that we're imagining that operating is, I'll give an example of a very, very specific need that we received a call for. So there is a woman in our community who owns and operates a traditional Indian dance troupe, and they annually have a festival in April. And it was about 2 weeks before the festival was scheduled to occur that their venue canceled on them. So they reached out to our staff to say, we need help identifying the venue. And, you know, through our network of connections, we reached out to all of the venues and shared with them the list of what they were looking for in a venue. And eventually were able to connect them with a venue that was able to host their festival. But that whole process took like 5 or 6 days, just because of them sending us the information, us distributing out the information, us following up with folks, us facilitating introductions. And if we have this asset map that we're talking about, and we can actually map out, let's say, performance or rehearsal spaces and include within that all of the accommodations that they have, all of the amenities that they have, what their audience capacity size is, and then also connect someone directly to the person that they would need to contact in order to see if it's available. We just took that 5 to 7 day process and shrunk it down to essentially an afternoon. So that's one way that this tool will help provide self-agency as it relates to connecting to resources in our community. Similarly with things like professional development workshops. One of the areas that the Arts Council has been duplicating services were some of the professional development workshops that we provided, recognizing that Boom Concepts provides them, Shiftworks provides them, Radiant Hall, Brew House, others in the community provide them. And we never had a centralized information source of what was available in our community, who was leading it and when. And this will help make that information more available to the folks operating within our sector. You know, Tanya says, as someone that has operated, for quite a long time in the arts, what are your thoughts on how something like an eco map and this centralized information source can, more rapidly and more efficiently provide folks with the information and resources they're after?
Well, something that I have definitely brought up to the board and have talked about before, and I think this is something that some of the people in the crowd have been referencing. When I like to think I always say there's a couple of different versions of community that people talk about. There's people that talk about community as in the community that comes to them. There's the community that you go out and actually access and talk to and connect with and make, opportunities known, resources known, stuff like that. When I first joined the board, that's how I felt GPAC was doing that work, right? Jen Saffron, Christiana Leach, they came to Boom, they presented GPAC stuff at Boom. And I think over the years that we kind of stepped back a little bit from that and we started presenting, more events and things that were going on based off of just like what we wanted to do. But I always, made sure that I said, hey, when we talk about community, and I think this is what people are always thinking, I always talk about this in our shift works stuff too. When we talk about community, right, we got to talk about how we are meeting people where they are at. Especially something we just started an Artists Taking Care of Artists program, where we are outreaching to other communities that are not just Central Pittsburgh. And Patrick made himself available to, be a part of that, to reach out, to speak to people, to make time, free time for people to show up for office hours, to say, hey, I'm here, I'm available. And that's something that GPAC needs to do more. I think a lot of, the things that we think about too, and it's like, of course, people know me because of like Boom and me and DS stand front and center. That's just what we do. That's how we talk to the community. That's how we connect with people. I think a lot of people didn't know people in GPAC, right? And so when we talk about the boards, hey, we need to be going to these events. Hey, we need to be talking with people. If somebody else has something that's going on, we need to be there. We need to be involved. We need to make people feel like we have a presence there. Not only in Pittsburgh, we need to go to Armstrong, we need to go to, some of these other communities, Westmoreland, all these other places. We can't just be centralized downtown. I think that was one of the things too, when we talk about, even where we're at, we were up on the seventh floor, right? Nobody probably felt like they could even come and access GPAC in that way. Looking at like, hey, how am I going to connect with somebody that I don't even know what they look like or who they know? We are talking about setting up these systems, but even with these systems that we are setting up, the team, the staff are now trying to make sure that they are being more present in the public. So I think those two things have to go hand in hand. You build the systems up, but you also go out in the community, go out to the public, go out to the people that are in need, and you give it to them. You don't wait for them to come to you, because if you wait for people to come to you, they're not going to come to you at all. They're not going to feel like they can connect with that resource. They don't feel like they can connect with you and learn more about what your organization is doing and what you can provide and how you can also set up in their communities and what they have going on. That is something that I stand on, especially just with the work that I do. And I've seen Patrick, I've seen the people on the staff like step up to that. I mean, they don't have to hear me anyway, because I'll definitely make sure I continuously say that. But, and seeing these things being built, being put together, and also being present in the community is something that is super important. I think that people will appreciate that. And even if they don't feel that, if they don't feel that presence in their community, please tell us. Like, if you live somewhere further out, if you live somewhere that you don't feel like is being supported with, an arts organization or somebody that has resources, please reach out, please say something so that somebody can come out and at least even check out what's going on in that area. I know there are different areas where people are building things that they don't feel like they have the resources for. And so, we need to do both things. People need to reach out, and then we also need to be periodically checking in with other people and letting them know what we have going on.
Michael, Nayli, with the two of you being new to the board, if you serve out the duration of both of your terms, it's essentially the duration of the strategic plan. And some of the things that you've heard this afternoon shared with us by our community members, as directors, which ultimately are responsible for the management of the CEO, who's then responsible for the management of staff. What are ways that you envision as new directors really thinking through some of the things that are being shared this afternoon, and how you can hold me accountable to that work and make sure that we are serving in that way?
I think, from my perspective, just having joined the board and having been recruited by Patrick, the thing that attracted to me is exactly the type of questions that we're fielding now. The question was, because I didn't know what GPAC was either, right? So that becomes a central point of, I even think what Thompson's saying, is to make sure that the community broadly understands it, that the community then understands the ways that they can access it, that we can tap into the community to find out and connect all these kinds of dots, right? Connect audiences with artists, artists with resources, resources with the community, et cetera, et cetera. So it's an ecosystem. So my goal is to be a participant over the time that I'm on the board and actually having that be something that's real, right? Not something that's just conceptual or to show up on PowerPoint presentations, right? Because at the end of the day, where the rubber meets the road is these rooms, when artists show up to present their work, should be filled, right? And that should be something that's a continual kind of effort on the part of everyone who's involved. So I was attracted to it because I believed that was something that I wanted to participate in. And I thought that Patrick, in talking about transparency and talking about accountability, and most importantly, talking about understanding the nature of the resources and the nature of the audience seemed to be super important, and it was something that I want to be part of over the time I'm on the board.
Yeah, I mean, in a similar lens, I recruited by Patrick, and I will tell you this. I heard Patrick speak, and I was part of Leadership Pittsburgh, and it was a group of about 67 leaders in the region, and the program is intended to bring sort of like the highest leaders across the organization in a multitude of business. And I remember hearing Patrick, very emotionally and powerfully speaking about GPAC and what it does. And that whole group of people that was there was immediately interested. And one of the things that you said that I thought was very important, right? And the reason why I feel passionate about this is that we often overlooked the informal networks and the people that are already connected and in position of powers that can open doors in meaningful ways, right? And that has been something I have had to struggle with, or maybe have a better understanding of. But I think the concept of giving visibility to different organizations, right? Not just the standard people who gives money to the arts, but the other companies that are also have a big pockets and that have an ability to give you visibility and to understand and appreciate the arts in a meaningful way. I think that those organizations need to get more involved. I think that we have an opportunity to tap into my 66 years in Leadership Pittsburgh and say, hey, what are your companies doing? Are you showing up for these shows? What are the ways in which you are supporting our Black and Brown communities in the arts? For me, the immigrant community now as a Venezuelan, something I feel passionate about, and in a meaningful way are women, right? Like how are we giving them visibility? And so I will tell you this, I have zero interest on lip service. I wouldn't be here if that's what I hear. And I also have developed multitude of strategic plans and have actually moved organizations towards execution. Anything in paper looks nice, but when you actually have to get it done, that's the difficult component to it. And that's my promise of ensuring that the things that we're saying or that they're saying they're going to execute, we're actually doing that in a meaningful way. I also want to point out, because you mentioned that and it's so critical. My saying is always do the best you can with what you know and until you know better. And once you know better, do better. So we know better now. So now we have to do better, and you have to help us as well. So if you do have artists that you know are struggling or people that doesn't have access to certain resources, viewing the council as a means to give them access to that, it's super important. And the same for the board members. I would hope that somebody comes to me and say, hey, you have access to the parents. Can I actually maybe ask if I can do X, Y, and Z? I have a massive Rolodex. What do you need? Let's figure it out. And I build it from zero. And that's what you're bringing. You're bringing a group of people who are passionate about what you're doing and that are willing to open the doors for you as well.
So we're gonna move forward to what the actual goals of the next 5 years look like. But before we do, really want to reiterate the ways that we are going to hone in our vision and hone in our role within the community. So as we move forward, the areas that we are really going to focus on is 1, sharing resources, 2, fostering significant relationships and partnerships, 3, seeking community input about the region's evolving needs, 4, advocating for art-centric policies and funding, and then finally, as you touched upon earlier, increasing public awareness of arts and culture in our region. And that really is what puts us in, I think, a unique view where we have a 10,000-foot view of our sector and a 360-degree scope of our sector. You know, we're the unique organization within the ecosystem that isn't concentrated in one specific artistic discipline, aren't specifically concentrated within one region of Allegheny County or southwestern Pennsylvania, or specifically focused on one career level. So as we move forward, those are the 5 ways that we are going to live our mission more authentically. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mia. Want to move forward?
Do you wanna go one more?
Yeah.
Do you wanna go
One
back?
more, one more.
Hang on.
Go ahead.
Do you wanna go back
No,
here
no,
or?
keep going until you get to the next orange slide.
The plan, the whole reason we're here today. We got 5 goals over the next 5 years. And I'm gonna do an overview of them. I am happy to sit and talk with anyone about the nitty-gritty details of each and every one. I have been staring at this for the past 2 months, and creating a very in-depth implementation plan. If anyone want to talk about that, shoot the email. We can find time to do that. But if you want to go ahead. Oh, you did. So the 5 goals, we have restoring credibility with open communication, operationalizing transparency within the organization and goal setting, metrics, and accountability, becoming the primary information hub for the arts community in Southwestern PA, and increasing financial and staff capacity, and creating a compelling membership benefit. Okay, so goal 1, restoring the credibility of the Arts Council. As you've all heard, we've done some damage. We have some real reckoning that we need to do and repair that we need to do with the community. And we want to make sure that's proactive. So one of the things that we're doing in this space is going to start creating biannual reports for the community that lets folks know what we've been up to, what is coming, what are our financials, so you can look and see how we're spending our money. And if you want to critique that, feel free. We want to be very open and proactive in that communication with the community. We also, and that's, those pieces are going to happen sooner rather than later in this plan. One of the other big pieces of this first goal is we will eventually be opening up our board meetings to members of the Arts Council. So what does that mean? Not 100% sure yet. That is coming in year 4 and 5. But our hopes is that we will get to a point where members can come, they will have an active voice, and be able to help us make decisions, whether that's programming decisions, or maybe we have a pot of money, what should we do with it? We want you involved in making those decisions, but we want to make sure all the foundations are in place before we bring that in, otherwise that could be chaos. But year 4 and 5, you can look for that to happen. You want to go to the next one? So goal 2, operationalizing transparency, goal setting, metrics, and accountability. It's kind of 3 parts to this goal. The first one being programs and services. We created with the strategic planning consultants a strategy screen to kind of determine, should we even create a program? This goes back to what Patrick was saying, we create programs, we'd stop them, they'd be duplicative. We don't want to go through that process anymore. So we created a strategy screen that any new program or service has to go through. So we don't make those same mistakes. Okay. The second part of this is finances. If you look in the strategic plan, there's a lot of talk about our finances of the past, and the mishaps in that. One of the things we are really focusing on in these first 6 months of this plan, which we are currently actively in, is updating our financial systems, making sure that we have good bookkeepers, making sure that we are checking in as a staff and a board on our finances, so we never have to question where we are in the budget. That is something that, in the past wasn't our strongest. But that is something moving forward, we will be taking a hyper focus on, and in turn, sharing that with the community through those biannual reports. And then the third one is staff. We got 6 folks here. It's a lot of things to do with only 6 people. But one of the things that we heard through the planning process with all the staff sessions is, there was not clarity around everyone's role. There's a lot of overlap in kind of job duties. I think that's pretty common in the nonprofit world. But we want to make clarity for folks so they know what they're responsible for and what they're going to be held accountable for. Saying we're asking, you to hold us all accountable as an organization, we want to put ourselves accountable for what we are supposed to be doing in this organization. So we will all have clear understandings of what that is. How do we onboard folks? Any new people coming in, making sure they have a clear understanding of who we are, what we do, and why we do it. So, go ahead to the next one. Goal 3, becoming the authoritative information source. So the big piece here is that information hub that Patrick was talking about. I think he did a good job of explaining kind of what that's going to look like. But I will say the thing that I'm most excited about of this is that it will not require users to have to input a bunch of information into it. It's going to use algorithms and things. I don't know all the tech words, but to pull from your websites, from existing event sites, and be able to pull that information into it. Not to say that there won't be some input that will need to happen, but a lot of that will just be flushed through the internet. That's the best check words I got for y'all. But I'm very excited because prior to my time at the Arts Council, I worked for a performing arts organization, and having to upload all of those events, all your events, to all of the different event listings, it takes so much time, and it's annoying because each one asks for a different thing. This way now you can just pull from your website. You don't have to. I'm very excited about that. Goal 4, create a compelling membership benefit. So again, Patrick already talked pretty in depth about this. I'm very excited that we're formalizing all of the informal stuff that we've been doing. If you have a need, you're like, I need to find a gallery space. I don't know even how to approach gallery folks to get my artwork up. Can you introduce me to someone? We'll be able to connect you to that person. And one thing we are exploring is the idea of what can a mentor kind of look like in that space? And how can we help to cover costs for what that mentorship can look like? So that is something that we are exploring and raising money for. And that would be all part of the vendor services. Goal 5, increase financial and staff capacity. So the first part of this is we need more money. And we need to increase our contributions. We have been heavily reliant on foundations, and we are looking to diversify that. We are looking to increase our corporate contributions, thinking through what kind of services we are providing that are already primed for that. So looking to those, so we're not always going back to the same vendors. We're also looking at how do we increase our individual giving? What does that look like? What does donor relations look like for an organization like ours? It's very different than if you are a presenting organization where you have people who come to your shows and attend. The people who we have fast emails for is often the people that we're looking to serve. So individual giving has to look different. The second part of this is increasing earned revenue and then increasing staff bandwidth. The earned revenue piece, a lot of that is going to come from that membership. We are looking at what the costs and goals are going to be for that. We are in the process of exploring that with a consultant to determine that pricing structure. But then we're also looking at adding new staff. So with that, we will be hiring in the next couple months for 2 positions. we'll be looking for a director of membership and what is it, Lisa? Communications coordinator? Yes, so we are gonna be hiring those positions by the end of the year. Those will be posted. So I encourage you to look out for those. And that again is to help us get that membership department up and running, and also to increase the marketing and communication support we do for the community. But yeah. So I kind of expressed like my highlights of the things that I'm excited about in this. I'm curious if there's any pieces of this plan that anyone else wants to kind of say that you're excited about, nervous about, any of the above.
I'll talk, I can talk all day. I am actually very excited about the membership goal, that I think that's probably the one I'm looking forward the most. And if I connect this to your question prior as how would I see all of this happening 5 years within my tenure? I think that's the one where we can have the most significant impact, and then also where I think it can help a lot of people. So we can have a good membership program and give people agency, and then empowerment, and find them those resources and those networks to make them successful. I think that that's something that even if you just check that one, that is like great. You do want to check all of the other ones, but I think everything comes from that specific space, and then finding ways. And I love the idea of corporate given. I was even thinking about, how you get some of these corporations to have access to this tool so they can go and find a photographer, and they can have, a dancer that can come to their corporate retreats, like all of these things that can be so great to give people those access that normally nobody would even think of them.
I wanted to add another thing that I'm excited about. So I said at the start of this that I've been here for 5 years, and now we're looking towards the next 5 years. I can say very confidently that this is the first time I feel like the team actually knows what we're all working towards. It has been hard, also the pandemic in there, so that makes it extra hard, to know what we're striving for, how are we going to approach this as a team? And I think this is the first time since I've been here that I feel like we really are clear about where we're going. And we're clear how we're going to get there, and we're all on the same page. So it feels very refreshing in a lot of ways. So I'm very excited about all of this.
I'll share the goal. I think I'm excited by this plan as a whole, but the goal that I am most excited to see us implement and actually continue to operate with is really opening up our board meetings to members, and then thinking about power sharing. We are a member organization, and right now only 2% of our budget comes from our membership dues, which tells us something, because if we look at our counterparts in Philadelphia, closer to 25% of their budget comes from their member dues, right? So there's something broken in our membership structure and how we serve our members, or what our members see as far as the benefit and value of supporting the Arts Council. And this is really a critical time for the Arts Council. If you look at the plan and you look at the financials of that plan, you'll see that over the last 7 years or so, we've never had really more than 30 days liquidity, right? Which means we have not been a nimble organization or a fiscally solvent organization in many cases, right? So we really, as Mia talked about the work we have to do around our financials, there's a lot of work there if we want to exist beyond this plan. And I think that really thinking through how we are not so grant dependent, but we can actually sustain ourselves through membership, corporate support, earned revenue, et cetera, is really important. But in order to succeed in that, people have to trust us. They have to feel like they're connected to us. They have to feel a part of what we're doing. And the best way to do that is to share power with them. So, what we've been talking about at a staff level and have introduced in conversations at a board level, but they have to go much further, is really thinking about what does it mean to share power at the board level. As we think about if we have discretionary funds, what happens with those discretionary funds? What is the way to employ them in our community? if we think about what our advocacy campaigns need to be for the year, who gets to decide what that is, right? How do we allow our community to have a voice in helping shape what those priorities are for the year? So, I think most excited to see us open up our operations in that way so that more of our community feels like they are involved in the decisions that we make. So if you want to go ahead to slide 30, we'll wrap it up here. The next steps, and Mia touched on this a little bit, is we're really now in the financial planning model of it all. So we are re-engaging Workhorse Collaborative to do some financial modeling and projections with us. They're going to do a deep dive. They know our financials historically now as a result of the strategic planning process. And we're going to work with them now to think through how do we resource this plan over the next 5 years. Because I will tell you, I'm not interested in just having this plan be something that exists on paper. I don't think any of our staff is interested in that, and I don't think our board is interested in that. So the next steps are working with Workforce Collaborative around that financial modeling and projections so that we can implement everything that's in this plan. And again, you can hold us accountable to it. In the spirit of again, owning our mistakes and thinking about what repair looks like, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge ShiftWorks in the room, because what I would like to acknowledge is one of those ways that we have done harm was by being a irresponsible fiscal sponsor. ShiftWorks started as a part of the Arts Council and remarkably grew into its own entity that required fiscal sponsorship, for which we provided that. And I can tell you, I don't think we ever proactively provided the financial reports that we committed to, could give you a clear, accurate answer of what your financial balances were. And that was a failure on our part and also impacts the way an organization can operate. So, Sally Ann, I really want to own and acknowledge the ways that we failed in that relationship. And thank you for your grace and patience as we sorted it all out.
Thank you. I appreciate your openness, your honesty, and the way in which you engage with trying to remedy the challenges we had. So thank you.
So with that, any additional questions from our audience this afternoon, or are there questions from Facebook or Zoom?
No, but we did get that one question early.
We'll start with the questions.
All right. Lisa, you okay? Or, you good? Okay. My name is Beth Corning, and I'm the director of Corning Works, and which, strangely enough, we're celebrating our 15th anniversary, which is kind of astounding in my eyes. Thank you. I was brought here to Pittsburgh to run the dance hour, which had sunk beyond even the board's knowledge. By the time I said yes, I came in to find out that they were $50,000 in debt, and the board had no idea. So that was where that started. So I understand the running of organizations in this town. I've learned a lot about Pittsburgh, which I was not aware of. And I remained here. And I am sad, mostly because you were all put in this position of having to apologize for your predecessors. So I think that needs to be recognized by us all. You've spent a great deal of time apologizing. It is necessary, obviously, because even when I was at the dance hour, I remember going, nah, I'm not going to be part of the GPAC. It doesn't really do shit. And they're asking for stuff from us that, no, not going to happen. But I watched and occasionally would interact with them, etc. I think that one of the things, I think this is very impressive. You're an incredibly savvy speaker, which is important. And I love hearing the voices that are part of the board and how this direction is going. I keep coming back to all, and I've been in this field, somebody pointed out very nicely to me, that I've been in the field for 46 years. I'm only 48. I worked with this gentleman back here, so I can look at him.
Anyway. So I understand arts organizations, and I think the couple of things that have come up, which is the point that the arts councils can be real voices for the arts community, right? And what does that mean? It means having to be really careful with your language. So when you say you've been to studios and somebody comes back, you can't use those words because you're talking to funders who don't have an idea what an artist does, no concept. I will stay away from names, but I remember going into a major funder here and saying, so this is when I was back in the Alloy and I had very fancy studios. I felt like I was back in Europe. It was really fancy and incredible. And I said, look, I want to do something for the dance community here as sort of a senior mentor person. I'm going to bring in people and we're going to do workshops for all these dance people in town that are like running organizations. And this person turns and said, well, why would they want to come to that? They already know how to dance. Thank you. So I was like, yo, don't you have like educational development in your field? Don't you have? Okay, whatever. So I realized at that point in time that there are funders, there are people who don't understand the language, right? They're going to go buy a house in France, but they don't have to speak French. So one of the things that I think is really important that to all the savvy people that you are speaking to, you dumb down your language a little bit. And I hate to use that word because it really makes it sound bad, but I think, and I don't think it needs because you're speaking to people stupid, you're speaking to people who don't speak the language. So most of us, for most of my career, I danced in the back room of my house. I would go to studios, I'd beg, borrow, and steal. You should know that Madonna, you all know the name. She was my college roommate. She used to clean the bathrooms at Alumni Alley so she could take classes there. So we all did this, right? The thing that concerns me is that you have all this stuff that you feel like you have to prove, but you're bringing in one of the second people as a membership coordinator. You got to explain that one to me, because before you get people like me to come on and be a member, you're going to have to do some pretty fancy dancing. So I'm wondering if that money towards that position probably shouldn't go the first year to somebody else. To somebody who goes out to all the places that are like, you know, the really fabulous coffee shop down on Penn Avenue, Margot's. If you've ever been there, great coffee. And they're fabulous space. And I'm still one of this generation that goes, oh, I found a barn, I'm going to put on a show. I had a couple of young dance people go, I don't know how to start. Walk into the coffee shop. They got great evenings there and do a pop-up, man. And put a bucket. You'll probably walk away with more money than a grant will give you. And you'll have it done and you'll try your work. But if that new person that you hire instead of the membership role, they go out to all these restaurants and they go out to all these places and go, I can put up an artist here. Can I have your name? So that this catalog of references that you're coming up with might really have some references. And then as you start to build these things out, rather than putting all this onus on you, which is the only reason why I really worked very hard when I left the Alloy and started Corning Works again, was to make sure that I had a board was not going to turn around and tell me what to do. In the sense that you have a good idea, go do it, because there's not enough resource on this staff to go do all these really great ideas. So I got this great board that helps. But one of the things that I realized was this sensibility that you can't be everything to everybody. There's no way. And you have to set out these parameters really clearly so that everybody isn't coming to you going, well, I expect this, I expect that, I expect this. So that somebody can come to you and say, oh, you've got a writer on your board? I know you're breaking out in sweat, my husband's a writer. So, but, you know, I mean, there are these tools. Oh, you can do this, you know who to connect me to? This is what artists really need. And the arts community, we can try to work with each other, but we're so busy running plays to keep our wheels going. Collaboration means 2 times the amount of money, 3 times the amount of work. And interns, forget it. You want me to explain this? You don't have the time, honey. I gotta go over here and do this. So all these things are really big plans, with a lot of big money. I think in this geopolitical place that we're at right now, hopefully it'll get better. And all the things that are coming as to us as human beings right now, we really need to understand what you can really do. If you can really front for the artists to the funders, great, that's going to help. If you can really be somebody that artists here can call up and go, is there a studio that I don't have $20 an hour? How do we make this happen? The other reality is you can put all the water out there, and the only people who are going to come are the people who really want the water, that old horse thing. You know? And the other thing is, I've always said to people, I can teach you how to dance, but I can't make you an artist. So you can put all those resources out for people, but the real artists, the people with the temperament and the management who are going to succeed, because there's no money in this field. None. You, as the Arts Council people, are making 3 times what every artist in this town's making. And there, but for the grace of us, go you. So that has to be a reality in the book. And I have held onto this mic long enough that I can. And thank you for trying to do this. Really, it's huge. It's a big, big thing. And I think the less time you stop apologizing for your predecessors and get this going, it's going to make more sense to everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And to touch on just one part of what you shared, I'd love to go with you to Margot and sit down and have a coffee and have a further conversation. But we recognize we can't be everything to everyone, right? And I think that that's a way that we overstretched ourselves in the past. And that balance of how are you inclusive and accessible while also recognizing your capacity constraints is a real challenge for an organization like ours.
Every organization.
And that is why we don't say who we will or won't serve, we say who's a priority for our capacity. And that's really how, as a staff, we're going to look at the requests that are placed upon us and determine how we allocate that resource of time, that resource of mental capacity, in a way that does meet our internal objectives around being accessible, being inclusive, and not just, giving more to those that already have it. Question.
Hi, Stephanie Lancey. I'm a working artist. First time I've ever heard of the Arts Council today. So I'm glad to be here. It's hard to follow because there was such great commentary. I actually came from corporate, which has lots of goals and backgrounds and high strategies, but the common language is what's needed for something simple for working artists to really grasp onto. And for me coming in here, the first thing I thought was, how can I help? I'm a working artist. I would love to help another artist. I've been doing this for 20 years. I would love to be a mentor, but I didn't see a part of the plan that said, how does working artists actually contribute? Not just membership money, because I don't have that, but I can do time. I have time in my calendar, but I don't have money so much to give in terms of a fundraising level. But that would be my contribution, is that I'm excited. I don't know anything about the past, but the future looks really good to me as a working artist. So I'm really excited, and I love Pittsburgh so much. I'm so excited to be here and work on my art here in Pittsburgh. So thank you for putting this all together. Just be very specific and simple and ask where working artists can contribute. That's my only input.
Thank you for that feedback.
Hi, Bridget again. I wanted just thank you for everything that's been shared in this space. And I think I had a little bit of the same kind of questions, like when it comes to membership, like definitely wanting to be a member, definitely understanding that. But then when we did our strategic plan, we listed our priorities in order of importance. I don't know if you all did that, but the first one was like reestablish trust or whatever, like however that was worded. So I wonder, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I wonder if like membership is like, maybe it's like a year that's guaranteed to people. And part of that membership looks like GPAC coming into the board meeting, GPAC reviewing a grant, that proposal, GPAC kind of like hands-on, a little bit more support so that we can see, like, the switchboard thing is really awesome, but it's disconnected, I think, from the people that are running the organization. And I think like, you know, trust is built when you can look somebody in the eye and be like, okay, cool, this person is for me. So I just wonder if like, hey, can you join me on that Zoom call? Hey, can you know what I mean? Like the presence, in addition to the resource, I think might be a good place to start. And I think that's how you will get genuine membership that see the investment and are then willing to meet you on the other support of like what membership dues are. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But I agree, start small and, you know, you were, you know, handed an unfortunate situation, but the future is bright. So I think like, I appreciate and the acknowledgement is really big. And I think that, you know, this is a moment where, again, it is the moving forward, it is the repair, it is the restoration and all of that too. So.
Thank you.
Can I just point something on? And I don't know if I should, but I will. Because I think what you said is such an important topic, and I think it touched on what you said about like, we need to be in the community and we need to be listening and we got to be more present in these spaces and we have to be here and because your comment about I'm a working artist and I want to be involved and I want to help and it might not be monetary now, but maybe eventually, hopefully turns into that, right? With the right resources and the right connections and you helping other people and empowering them as well. And so I think that your comment is so spot on the sense of we need to make sure that we are listening. I also do want to point out that trust is built when people can expect the consistency from this council. So if we're promising things that we cannot do, that trust will be eroded faster than actually saying no. And I think that if I heard correctly, I do not know the past either, so I'm naive during the Kool-Aid here, but I think in the past we said yes to a lot of things that could not be delivered and that mistake could not be made again. So even having a conversation to say, where do we show up? How do we show up consistently? It's very important. So the mistakes of the past are not made again.
Well, we are over our allotted time, and if we don't have any further questions, or we have.
We did have that one that came in earlier.
Yeah. One of the questions that came in online asked about what is the geographic region that we serve? And I think that that's a question that has come up quite a bit over the last year. I know previously the Arts Council said it served 11 counties. And again, when we talk about capacity, that's not something we have the capacity to honestly do. We have state funding that makes us accountable to 4 counties, Allegheny, Beaver, Washington, and Greene. But because we also receive funding from the Allegheny Regional Asset District, Allegheny County is the county that gets the majority of our time and capacity by the means of the public resources that we receive. So in regards to the service region, you know, there's a lot of crossover between Westmoreland County and Allegheny County because artists that might live in Westmoreland still have social and economic activity in Allegheny County and vice versa. So it's not as though there is a hard line around any of the counties that we serve, but with specific programs that we administer, like our grant program, there are geographic constraints with that. Well, with that, I thank you all for being present with us today, for listening to us, but also more importantly, sharing your thoughts with us. And I encourage you all to stick around for our networking and happy hour with complimentary drinks and hors d'oeuvres. Thank you.